And we're live. I think I got the count this time. So, welcome to our podcast. This is episode 26. There is no name. Or if there is, we'll make it up on the fly and tag it on afterwards. But as of right now, we don't have a name for this podcast. You are watching the channel Close Encounters of the Tech Kind. It is November, let me double check, November 21st. And we're coming to you from various locations throughout the universe. I don't want to say metaverse because that's not where we're at. We're in the universe. So, joining us today, I'm John, and we have Mike,
Hey everybody, how's it going?
we have Jackson,
How's it going?
and we have Artie as always.
Somewhat, yeah.
Well, you're always Artie, right? Except on days that end in Y.
I plead the fifth.
Yeah, that works.
Yeah, you and everyone else on the news apparently. Well, Google.
Everybody's pleading the fifth.
I don't see why you wouldn't.
Yeah, there's some interesting theory on that one. I stumbled down the YouTube channels, and there's people advocating that you plead the fifth no matter what. Like, okay, well, you do you. I'm going to cooperate.
I just don't get arrested.
Don't do the things to get arrested. How about that? You don't do those things.
Well, I've seen
Sorry, I skipped a
YouTube
step there.
videos where people are trying their best not to do that, and they're that's a whole other line of topic.
Yep.
You
Don't wanna
can't
go there.
arrest me. I'm a sovereign citizen.
Well, if only, if only.
Yeah, I'm never gonna play that game. That I don't see that winning any courts anywhere. But hey, again, you guys do you. We're gonna do us, and we're gonna just jump right into some interesting topics. But who's got our first topic tonight?
Well, we can start with the U.S. government, the DOJ, has officially requested that Google sell Chrome, among some other things. I think we brought it up in I don't know if it was our last podcast or if the one before last episode. Google was officially found by a judge to be a monopoly, right? Monopoly as far as online search goes. Which the judge, get this, the judge's name is Amit Mehta. So Judge Mehta of the U.S. District Court of the District of Columbia found in August that Google was illegally maintaining a monopoly on online search. And so in October, or let's see what date, let me get my dates right here. Basically, I think this was Monday. Or no, sorry, today was 21st. No, by Wednesday, they need to have a solution, a proposed solution, the plaintiff, right? And so this was their solution, was a few things. I think it was like 13 pages long, but some of the highlights were Google has to either choose to sell Android, or they will bar Google from making its services mandatory on phones that use Android to operate. So was that one. There was the have Google sell Chrome. I don't remember if they gave a different option for them. I'm trying to find it here. Other deal that was a big kind of headliner was that they would bar Google from making deals with companies like Apple or I don't know, any other tech companies that provide browsers, and it would bar them from making these deals that have Apple use Google as their default search engine. And so with all of that, that was the proposed correction to Google's monopoly. And I think there was one other part to the Android thing that if they caused if they force them to not force users to use Google services on Android. I think they said that even afterwards. Yeah, here it is. This is from the New York Times. They said that the government asked Judge Meta to give Google a choice: either sell Android, its smartphone operating system, or be barred from making services mandatory. And if Google broke those terms or the remedies failed to improve competition, the government could then force Google to sell Android at a later date.
Could you imagine them unlocking Google Chrome from the rest of their ecosystem?
Well, yeah.
Google Docs, Gmail, Chromebook.
It'd be weird.
That's huge.
But how is that different? Because you look at all those services you just mentioned, go side by side with Microsoft. Google has a browser, Microsoft has a browser. I would say Google has an operating system, although it's limited to. I don't think I've ever seen a full PC running on Chrome OS. The only thing I've ever seen are more mobile, tablet type devices or netbooks, right? But still. And then they have an office and productivity suite. Microsoft has that. So how is this come down against Google? I mean, I guess it's because of market share.
I think it's
some ways,
because
but how is it different than Microsoft?
I think it's because of just the Google search engine. Microsoft has Bing, but no one uses Bing, and I think that's their defining factor.
It's market share. It's
Mm-hmm.
despite the fact that Edge, which is Edge is Chrome based.
It is,
right?
Yep, Chromium.
So
it's the engine behind. So is DOJ talking about Chromium or Chrome?
That's a good question.
Well, and here's the insulting question.
I read.
Here's where I can throw some insult. Do they know the difference?
The judge's last name is Meta, right?
He knows the difference.
The irony of that.
I know. The next headline: Meta takes down Google.
Well, not that Meta. But that's why I'm saying is that, it seems like it's because it's almost like the bully walks into the room and has the huge market share, and so then it's like, that's not fair. He's got the huge market share. He must be doing something wrong. When you could probably argue that that's the same thing that was happening to Microsoft years and years ago.
Well, and more to that, I mean, how do you back that train up? If Microsoft developed their own browser, Firefox has their own browser, Microsoft gave up their browser and adopted Chromium engine behind the browser, and there's so many others that are Chromium based. Chromium is the gorilla in the room. How do you back that up and say, okay, now we got to have somebody else?
Yeah.
So,
but
one thing that I think might be a factor in wanting to detach this, Google has been using their market share to force changes to other organizations. The one that sticks out to me is you can't have ad blockers. We're going to get rid of ad blockers from the Chrome store. It's like ad blocking is something that is actually very beneficial to the end user, especially when it comes to security, because you go on, you randomly click on a random hinky site, you put a search into Google and it comes up with the Google ads, and the ads at the top, they can be spoofed and they can be infiltrated by untoward sites. So you click on one of those thinking that it's proper. An ad blocker can block some of the stuff from showing up on those sites.
Mhm.
And
Google itself was spoofed on Google Ads.
yeah,
Well, and even to that extent, if scammers are really making enough money, what's it to them to spend a few bucks on some legitimate Google ads
yeah.
that go to where they want them to go, you know?
Legitimate, illegitimate Google Ads.
Right, exactly.
But Google
Well,
has
Bunny Hop.
the leverage to basically dictate what things are used because Chrome is what 80% of the market, and the
at
rest is
least.
like what?
At least.
Yeah,
Which is very telling because I was going to say that you look at every basic PC that ships with Windows on it, Microsoft has gone to the effort to make sure, okay, it's going to have Windows on it. We're going to put the Edge browser on it. That's going to be the browser that starts up. The browser is going to go to Bing when it does its first search. It's all set up as defaults, and yet people are going in, and what do? Install Chrome or install something else. What search engine am I going to go to? I'm going to go to Google or to something else.
Wow. So I pulled up stat counter on global stats, and I was wrong. I'm going to retract that. I'm going to say Chrome has 2/3 of the market, 66.68%.
okay.
Next one
too
is
bad.
Safari at 18%. Who would have called that one?
I wouldn't have.
Edge
Mac
has
users probably.
5.25. Yeah, I
Well,
don't know
What
anybody
about
that uses
Mozilla?
Does Safari count for iOS, like mobile devices too?
I think so, yeah.
that would probably do it because
That
it
makes
is the
sense.
Safari browser.
Yeah.
Firefox?
Yeah.
Take a guess, Jackson.
Well, me
Well,
and one other guy.
I would I would have
What
thought
are
it
your
would have been a
guesses?
lot higher.
What are your guesses?
Well, I don't even know how much percent's left. We had what, 66, and then how much was Safari?
30. You got 36 left to mess with. Safari was 18, so there's half of that. You got 18% left.
All right, I'm gonna go a lot lower than I would have initially, and I'll say 7.8%.
So you got Firefox, you got Brave, you got a couple other just
Mike, what's your
random
guess?
browsers out there. My guess for Firefox,
Yeah.
I'll give it the benefit of having at least 10%.
Artie, what's your guess?
3.5.
Did you look it
Oh,
up?
Jackson.
Okay.
Jackson is closest without going under.
Over or under?
Under.
So, Mike, with Brave and
2.23.
Vivaldi
I'm
and
sorry.
those other browsers, those fall under Chromium, and
Well,
that's
because,
why
they're
their
Chromium based,
share
that's
is so
right.
large.
Whatever
Firefox?
happened to the Opera browser?
Real quick. It's 2.65%.
What is?
Opera is 2.2.
Really?
Really?
Yeah.
Well, I've heard some good things about Opera, so I guess it doesn't surprise me.
I'm surprised
They're-
Opera's still out there.
They've got a
You know-
fantastic browser for gaming.
Yeah, do you know where I first used the Opera browser?
Mm-mm.
At the
On my
Opera?
Nintendo. No, on my Nintendo Wii. Yeah. It was in the
Oh.
Nintendo store, and I was like, "What? Web browser? Opera? What? Like, I'll try this." And I mean, it worked, kind of.
What do you mean? What do you mean for gaming? Like, are people playing online games on the like browser games? Is that what you're talking about?
It allows a. I don't want to misrepresent it. It's been a minute since I've looked at it, but it has enhanced features for, like, if you're interacting with Discord online or other tools online, where it can float windows on top of your game to help you
Oh,
stay in touch.
interesting.
There's a number of other features, but I just don't use it. I hate to say it. It's Firefox and Chrome for me.
Yeah, I have heard of. There's also a small movement, at least in my circle, of people that are moving to Edge now, just because it is basically Chrome.
Guess what
Except
market share there is?
with less memory leaks. I think you said it, wasn't it? 8 or what was it?
5.25.
Hmm.
It's double Firefox. Who'd have thought?
Which maybe you can even say because the court is trying to make the argument that because Google sets itself as the default, that's where they're getting all of that. But look at Edge. Edge is the default on how many computers run Windows. The percentage, it's like 80-90%.
But does the court count its the Edge's Chromium engine, Chrome-based engine, in favor of Google? So that 5%, I mean, it's only 5%. You throw that on top of the, what'd you say, 64% or whatever it was?
2/3.
2/3. So now you're taking it up to nearly 3/4.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
I don't know how they count that. So
I don't know either, and I
So-
don't know if they even know to say, because I hadn't found. I was just looking. I didn't find any info on that.
So let's just do a thought experiment. Let's say we're Google. First off, I've had a way better background than the one I've got. We're Google. Do we get rid of the phone or the browser?
I think the proposition was to get rid of both, but if you're making me choose,
because the browser itself is the portal by which you're delivering a lot of your ad content.
I think
And-
Google wants to.
Okay.
hang on to that
So here's the
browser.
question. Here's the question. What's the market share of Android? Is it Android that we're
Android.
talking about? What's the
Mhm.
market share of Android versus iPhone?
I think Android beats out iPhone. I think it's
I've got a
The
lot
US
of friends
has
with
very-
iPhones.
it's true. I think it's proportionally different in the US. If you go anywhere outside of the US, iPhone is very small. But I even think in the US it'll get beat out.
I think most people have, if it comes to iPhones, they don't mind having an older version, whereas with the others, they can afford to upgrade.
So just Google search found Stat Counter again. So we're not endorsing them, but I'm just going to take single source because why not?
I've got another one for you.
Android is
never mind.
71.17. So
Android is?
71%.
Wow.
That's about the
iOS
same.
is
That
28.
Yep, same stats I've got.
And that doesn't leave that much left over for any other type of device.
The
Someone needs
next
to
one
make a
higher is
Linux-based.
Samsung. Yep. Next one
Is
higher
what?
is Samsung. Then it's unknown at 0.11%. iOS is 0.04 and Linux is 0.01.
Huh? I didn't
Huh.
know. Oh well, I guess yeah, that makes sense. That's worldwide. I wonder what we can see for the US, because I think in the US iPhone might come a much closer.
Not to derail this conversation because I do want to talk it to completion. Have you heard of the Anon phone? It's a Linux-based one.
No, what's it called?
Maybe?
A Nom phone.
Nom,
Maybe I have.
like Vietnam.
ANOM.
NAOM.
As in nom 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 nom.
Yeah.
Or
So
as in
this
anonymous.
Oh.
it was a sting by law enforcement to hand phones at a very jacked up price, like 20 grand for a phone that is encrypted from the inside and no cops can get into it. They were selling these things to the mob, to gangsters, to dark web, kingpins, saying, "Here, do this." Now, I'll tell you the smart
Where's-
dark web kingpins didn't use them.
Where's the back door?
It is the back door.
Oh. Nice.
These people thought it was a fantastic, like, you can't track me thing, when it was literally the bug in their car and glued to their hip.
That's hilarious.
Wow.
Okay, so I've got the stats for you. Get this. This is in the US. Market share. It's flopped. iOS does beat out Android. So in the US, iOS is at 51%, Android at 48.7%, and then Samsung comes in with a 0.15% market share.
What's Samsung? What is this?
I guess it's either. I mean, does Samsung not run? I'm an iOS user. Does Samsung? I think they have their own OS on all their
Every
phones.
Samsung I've had has been an Android-based phone.
It's
It
There's
might
some
be
older
their
phones that are
They
tablet.
still
have
out there that run the old Samsung OS
oh, like an
because,
old
Hmm.
like flip phone kind of a thing.
well,
like the
there's some
old brick
smartphones out
Nokias.
there. They just don't run the newer operating systems because the newer ones do not function on the phone, but people don't want to get rid of their phone because it still works. They can take out the
Right.
battery and replace it if they want to. It's that old. Well, that's only
Think,
like 6 years
think
Right.
of
old.
think of like a BlackBerry. It wasn't either OS, but it was its own. But
Yeah.
then, yeah, they died
Okay.
because they just couldn't stay with the program.
Someone needs to tell them that they're messing up the stats. But it's a lot closer, Jackson. It's nearly
Yeah.
half and half.
Yeah, nearly half and half. Which oh, it just escaped me what I was gonna say. But yeah, I mean, I've been I lived for 2 years in Brazil, and I mean, there an iPhone is a rare commodity. That's like a super, you know, you're rich if you've got an iPhone just because of imports and everything makes it so much more expensive than um especially when Samsung they make they make a series of affordable phones that are
hmm
just a fraction of the price of what you would have to pay for an iPhone.
Yep.
Yeah, so if I've got a use case where somebody needs a disposable phone that's not disposable, Samsung A15 is a great phone that does minimal work, but does everything that your standard company would need. It's $200
hmm
Mm-hmm.
or 250.
Yeah.
If I was going to go get an iPhone, oh my gosh, get a second mortgage. No, I mean it's well over $1,000 to get a new iPhone, and I'm talking like buyout prices. Never mind the lease that you can get with your carriers. Like
hmm
if you're gonna go pay cash and get a phone, the Samsung A line is way cheaper. It's less capable, but
For someone who
Well,
just needs to use it to call and just do
I
the simple things, it's
and
fine.
to this point
iPhone doesn't
too,
have iPhone doesn't have a non-flagship product. I'm sorry, Mike. Go ahead.
some of my friends or acquaintances, people I've known, it's more of a prestige thing to have an iPhone because of the fact that it's so dialed in on the hardware. This is the only place you can get it is at a Mac store or, something like that. It's a prestige thing for them. I got the latest iPhone, they
Yeah,
want to be the
kudos.
first. I want like
It's
there are people literally that want to be the first one in their neighborhood to pay the $1,000 for a cell phone and say, "Look, I got $1,000 cell phone right here." It's
so
a
Kudos.
prestige thing.
an
Apple
interesting
has a
trend with that.
fantastic marketing. Go
Go
ahead.
ahead, Artie.
An interesting trend with that is that that's no longer as prominent. There are more people that are holding on to their phones longer because they just can't afford to get a new phone every 6 months when they drop a new one.
Well, and a lot of that I think is because the way the carriers changed things. Like it used to be free phone upgrade
Yep.
or for a minimal price. Like the pricing on having the hardware was much affordable. And then the carriers, I think they probably figured out that they were losing a lot of money on that. And so then it's like, we got to lock you in for a 2-year contract. We got to do this. We got to make you pay closer to the full price or, work out some other arrangement. And so the pricing's changed a lot when it comes to the hardware. And that's probably what his, what's the word, uh, put the coolers on people, getting the latest phone every time a new one comes out.
Well,
I
there's
wonder if
no killer app anymore. I mean, we've got
Mhm.
Samsung advertised that you could zoom in to see the moon, which was proved fake. I don't know if you guys saw that one.
You can zoom in
I
on any
think
phone
that
to see
is
the moon. It's just not going to be clear.
hilarious.
What detail are you going to see when you do that?
No. Oh, you guys haven't heard about that one?
I know what you're talking about, John.
Yeah, Samsung put in their new flagship phone a feature where if you zoom in on the moon, you keep zooming and it will show craters and it'll show great detail of what is on the moon as you're zoomed in on it.
Oh, I know how to do that. You just make the camera suddenly flip over to Google Earth, but it's not Google Earth, it's Google Moon,
It's close.
and it's just satellite pictures that's feeding to you or something like that. It's just flipping
Not
The
even.
lens
It's a
is
still
too small
picture.
to actually see the moon.
They flipped it to a still picture.
yeah.
The guy proved it by setting a little white circle across the room from him on a black background. And he stood and he zoomed in with his camera onto the
And all of a sudden it
white
was the
circle,
moon.
and it turned
Yeah.
into the moon.
Oh.
Oh man, did they admitted to that after that came out? Didn't they? They were like, yeah, we did. We had. They called
Yeah,
it.
you can't deny it. I mean,
I mean, yeah, they called it. They're like, oh, it was AI enhancements for the photos. Is what they were claiming.
Interesting.
yeah, whoever came up with that brainchild at Samsung should be reminded of it.
So it goes back to the original question, is which one do you keep? Do you keep the browser or do you keep the phone? I would have to say ditch the phone, keep the browser. But here, I'm going back to Jackson with his
Mhm.
original article. You said that the court said that, so let's say that they ditch the browser, they're going to try that, but then they reserve the right to come back and say, look, if it's not making any improvement in the competition, then we're going to make you take the second option also. Does that work both ways? Like if they
So-
choose to ditch the phone and keep the browser and competition
So-
doesn't change, then they're going to make them give up the browser?
It looks like the now again, none of this is set in stone. This is
Right.
this was what the DOJ had. This was their proposal for correction, right?
Right.
Whether or not that gets approved and changed later on is independent. But from what I've read, it looks like Chrome, that is a non-negotiable. You sell Chrome. But beyond the sale of Chrome, they want to move further into Android. And then they had two options with Android. Either they sell Android or they stop making their services mandatory on it.
Okay.
And then
I have another
beyond
option.
that, you have another option?
I have another option. How about force Google to tell us how much our monetization is worth so that I can pay that on a monthly basis and never see another ad again?
Oh, actually, I wonder how much it is per person. Quite a lot, though. I bet
They
you.
know
They have.
exactly how much it is per person.
Oh, I'm sure they do. And I bet it's a good, decent chunk of change. I mean, I don't know.
Split down by demographics and regions and every stitch of everything. They can slice that data so many different ways, but they can average it out. I don't know. Well, let's ask Google.
Huh? I'd say if the question was, and so now I realize that we're kind of tweaking what the DOJ has said, but if the choice was between the browser and the phone, I'd give up the phone if I could keep the browser. But
I
it
think so, yeah.
sounds like that the browser is a done deal. It's gone, regardless of what they do with the phone.
Mm-hmm. Now it does look like, because there was, like you brought up earlier, Mike. It looks a lot like Microsoft, and the same thing happened to Microsoft in the early 2000s.
Mhm.
However, a decision to, at least according to the New York Times, they're saying that legal experts said that the request to force the sale of Chrome would likely be met with some skepticism from Judge Mehta, in part because in the 2000s, the similar attempt to break up Microsoft was overturned by an appeals court.
Mhm.
So it's important to remember that a lot of this is just, it was kind of like, okay, you have to give us a plan by Wednesday, and then this is what they gave, so we'll see what actually ends up coming out of it. But I mean, either way, even if it was just Chrome or was it was just the Android thing, both are huge payouts for Google, because they are collecting so much data from it and they sell it. And the ad revenue they get from being searched all the time is a lot. We know because we work with Google Ads.
So, if you take, and this is coming from thenextweb.com. I'm again not advertising anything. I'm just taking the first hit on Google. If you take the sum of the average ad revenue per user per year, it's a total of $349 and 20
Per
cents
user?
per
per
person
month?
per month or per year
Per year.
year. So divide that by 12, and that's per month.
Figure about $1 a day.
Yep.
I would
30
happily
bucks a
pay
month.
Google $36 a month to never see an ad in my web browsing experience ever again.
But the other thing you've got to remember with that is that it will go up in price.
It
won't
fluctuates.
be static,
Yeah.
especially for your demographic when Super Bowl time comes around.
Tempted to put you on the spot and say, what demographic is that? My computer prowess?
Old man.
Old man. Thank you. I'd rather be called a nerd.
Old nerdy man.
Nerds don't watch football, do they?
Okay, I'm going to put down the shovel. So, yeah, if we could spend what Google makes and not see another ad, I think everybody would jump on that. I think that's where like Amazon Prime and all those on the streaming services got their momentum, like Netflix, and now they're rolling back and going to an ad-based, cheaper model.
I'm really wondering if, I feel like that number has got to be a little bit bigger. Only 300 something a year
For Google.
for Google.
There's other ad sources.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's higher. I think Google is going to want to hold on to that as long as they can, because it's a lot of money.
That is a lot of money. I mean, you take 380 million Americans, the majority of which have access to a device. I mean, my kids, when they were 2, were playing on tablets. Don't judge me. They were playing on tablets and they could actually navigate successfully, and they'd run into ads and then click on them. And I'd say, yeah, please don't click on that. So at 3, my kids knew what is an ad and what to click on and what not to click on. So I guess there's education, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if you take 380 times 360, that's a lot of money every month, every year coming in.
And then add a bunch of zeros to the end of that.
Yep.
And that's just in America. Google is worldwide.
What a fantastic idea.
Except for Russia.
Except for Russia. Well, I mean, they haven't blocked them out yet, have they? But they're
Yes.
they did.
And yeah, Google's getting fined. We talked about that.
Right, but
yeah.
I thought they hadn't closed off their servers or anything like that.
They're trying. So they're about to do another shutdown of the internet to try and turn off their connection to the internet. It's not easy. They tried it about 18 months ago and did not work. They had to turn it back on because everything broke.
Yay for everything breaking.
It's funny how interconnected we are with the system we built. They've spent a lot of time trying to build up a new system that won't won't be affected by shutting it off, and they're about to try it again. I don't know the date, but it's coming up very quick.
There's just so much that goes on. Just as time has gone on, there's only been more layers added to the internet as we know it.
And in some instances, the early layers are spaghetti code or spaghetti wiring. So you've got like 3 or 4 people that know how that functions. And what is it? The XKCD comic of this giant tower of things, and down at the very bottom, you've got like one little tiny peg that's holding it up, and that little peg is like one random furry in the middle of Texas.
Yep.
There's a handful of people, and I think it's like 2 or 3 that could break the internet for all of us. Their job is to take the entire DNS record and put it in the root server, and then that gets copied out to everybody else. This came to light because the guy that did the update one day had a half complete copy of the DNS table.
Oh, yikes.
Uh-oh.
Half the internet shut off that day.
Oh man, that's funny.
I mean, could you imagine explaining to your boss, like, about the internet? You remember that day when you could get to all the websites you wanted to?
Remember a number of years ago when there was only this many websites or this many hosts on the internet? How would you like to travel back in time?
Oh, ironically, I do remember the time when I knew all the websites. I mean, internet was still kind of new. It was mid 90s. Just barely getting into public sphere. And the first question we had to ask our ISP was, is it text-based or do you have a GUI? Those were the
times. Fun times.
Let me tell you, there is no replacement for a good GUI. Holy moly. I can tell you that. Just from this past
DOS.
week.
I'm going to be learning Linux.
I've been working in for school. We've been learning assembly code, and oh my gosh, trying to debug that through GDB is just a headbanger.
Doing programming on your hands and knees, huh? Looking at every little speck of dirt. Is it this one? Is it this one? Is it this one?
My first assembly program was 8 bytes long.
Oh my goodness.
In DOS, it would read the key you press and return an error level back to the operating system equal to the ASCII value that the key was.
Wow. I remember in my high school computer programming classes, back then we were all learning Pascal because that was what the advanced placement tests were written in, was to do everything in Pascal. And there was a kid, he was a year younger than me, and I think his dad was a computer programmer for somebody, I don't know who, but so he knew assembly. This kid did. He knew the x86 assembly really well. And I got him to write me a Pascal library of graphics routines, but he wrote them like in Pascal, but the Pascal we were using could do inline assembly. So all the procedures and functions it would have escape to assembly. He'd write the whole thing in assembly, and it'd give it then a return value or something like that. And they were fast. They were the fastest graphics routines I'd ever used in Pascal at that time.
I believe it.
They were awesome.
Do you remember 4K demos?
Yeah.
There's some memories right there for you.
Another kid, different kid, he wrote a 3D graphing calculator in Pascal. And some assembly. I think he used some assembly for the graphics routines, but then the rest of it was written in Pascal. And he was taking, I don't know what level of calculus it was, but calculus people, when they get into higher calculus, it's a big, thick book, right? And he's like, here's this book. Open up to any page you want, find a graph, and we'll look at it. And his calculator could graph anything that was in that book. Just put in the equation and off it'd go, and there it was, 3D rendered, shaded, everything.
Wow,
He
that'd be
figured out how to
nice.
do it all. Yeah.
That's awesome.
I was surrounded by a lot of smart and brilliant people in my computer programming classes, that's for sure.
Tell us what a 4K demo is.
A demo that does amazing things in only 4 kilobytes of memory.
Your code has to be 4096 bits or less.
Yeah. Yeah.
What can you do with that?
Yeah, and that's a big thing in the because Jackson hinted at the fact, we did the trivia and I got Commodore 64 right. Commodore demos are still a thing even now. And writing amazing routines that do amazing graphical things on the screen with only an 8-bit processor and a little less than 64 kilobytes of RAM.
Wow.
Well, I'm
It's
hoping
pretty
there's some more
incredible.
trivia in this one today, but
I didn't come prepared. We'll come after Thanksgiving. We'll have more.
Yeah, I've seen a few x86 demos too. That was one of the things that was a popular thing to do in the computer lab in high school was kids would bring in demos that they had downloaded off of a BBS, which is a thing before the internet.
there's still a thing.
They are still a thing.
There's actually a whole bunch of Commodore BBSs still up and
There
running.
are.
When's the last time you were on one, Mike?
2 years ago on a Commodore BBS through new because there's such a big retro community these days, there's people developing new hardware for interfacing the old with the new. And so you can get things, Wi-Fi modems that you can plug into your serial ports on various retro computers. And you can get on the internet through Telnet and other resources to get onto BBSs. And I've been on a BBS. Yeah, I've been on I was on a couple BBSs a couple years ago. And then school got in the way, so I didn't have time to really dabble in that sort of thing. But yeah, it's out there. There's a lot of enthusiasts that are keeping it going.
Jackson, you know what a BBS is?
Mm-mm.
Bulletin Board Service, BBS.
Yeah.
Ah.
So you, with a modem,
Yeah.
get the phone number to your BBS and you dial up to that direct one-to-one connection to the BBS.
You hope it's not busy.
Good operators have more than one modem. Popular ones, some of those, like Windy City, they had like 28 modems attached to it.
Wow.
So it was basically a message board before the internet.
Mm-hmm.
That's so funny.
And they could be anything. You could theme whatever you want. I built a few BBSs.
Mm-hmm.
They were a lot of fun. We actually had one dedicated to Red Dwarf.
Uh-huh. I bet there's a lot. I was a co-system operator for a while. I never had my own just because I would have needed a dedicated phone line to do that. But I was a co-system operator for a while, and I helped a few people with theirs in different ways. It was a fun thing to kind of dive into and learn and everything. But yeah, you'd be the only one accessing that system. So you go through, you read your messages, you reply to the ones you want to reply to, and you had a set amount of time. You have 20 minutes to be online, and then the system would kick you off so that the next user could take his turn. And there was different things you could do to earn more time, or things like
Money.
that. You could play, you could play
money and
online
post content.
games. So you could
Yep.
take your turns on the game. And then when you were done, you were done for the day. Yeah. And then the neat thing was that some of the bulletin boards that I had in Utah, they were part of a larger network, like FidoNet was one that was a message exchange system. So somebody's bulletin board system would be like, okay, I'm a FidoNet bulletin board system.
Mm-hmm.
And it would exchange messages with somebody that was probably a little more long distance. And you could get messages over the FidoNet. It would take a while, but they would eventually propagate to and from more distant places. So you could be in a message exchange with somebody as far away as Ohio or New York or something like that. Our common connectors were to Colorado, to the Denver area, because a lot of messages I would see would have 303 area codes and so on and so forth. And it was an opportunity for, BBSs to like add their little tagline. This came from the such and such BBS at, and then the phone number for the BBS.
Well, that's why all those things had that on it.
Mm-hmm.
And those were the way that you do two-factor authentication or validation. Is you type in your phone number, it calls you back. You have to sign in with your name and password, or you don't get access.
Mm-hmm.
Because otherwise, you get 20 minutes, and then John 2.0 gets 20 minutes. John 3.0 gets 20 minutes, and I could just create 17 accounts. Well, only if I've got 17 phone numbers that lead back to my
Right.
computer.
Nobody was rich enough to have that back then,
Nope.
except the really rich kids.
Or the bulletin board operators.
Right. It was great fun. And there's actually, I have Facebook friends that is my original connection to them, was through a bulletin board system. There's a couple friends that I have that they had a bulletin board. They're a number of years older than me, but so when I was a teenager, they were kind of already in their college years and just getting out of college and starting their families and everything. And they had started a bulletin board system and had run it. And they hosted, because a bulletin board system tends to be a more local thing, nobody's going to want to pay the long distance charges to call something, be in Utah and be calling something in California or in Colorado or something like that. They keep it to the local numbers. And so that meant that there was opportunities for local get-togethers. Like, hey, we're hosting a party. We're going to be in the park barbecuing. Bring something. Come hang out with us.
Yeah.
And we went to BBS parties and met these people in person. Well, we got to be friends, and so now they're my Facebook friends, and that's how I keep in touch with them. And it's great fun. A lot of good
That does
memories.
sound like fun. That's pretty
Yeah.
cool.
The
And so
internet is the internet in a little more intimate setting. I'll put it that way.
It's kind of
remember-
funny. It's like the more connected we get over the internet, it's almost like the less connected we get in person, right?
Right. Go ahead,
Sure.
Artie. You're saying some.
So, I remember that there was one BBS that had an 800 number,
Many.
and I believe it was called Liquid Sky.
Yep.
And you call up that one on the 800 number, and it routed you to one of the random modems that it had set up. But that was one that had like easily 100 connections that you could connect to,
Mm-hmm.
and it was massive. But it also only allotted you 45 minutes a month, unless you
Ooh.
became a paid person
Mhm.
on there. So, I was on there twice.
Good
And you
times.
got to pay. You pay a lot because you're paying for the 800 number.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like a regular BBS might have been maybe $5 a month, $2 a month. That one was a $20 a month fee.
Wow.
That was in, back when money actually had value.
There was a time where, so not all bulletin boards are paid. You could run them for free.
Mhm.
I actually ran one out of my bedroom. I had a second line I was paying for in the house because, well, it's the internet. I don't want somebody picking up my phone and dropping my call. I was using a bulletin board as my answering machine.
Mhm. So, what was your favorite BBS system to run
Oh,
back end?
It's been too long.
Teleguard was the one that I was the most familiar with. A lot of our BBSs back in the day were Teleguard.
Yeah,
Teleguard, I want to say 2.7
you got
was
me
a
beat,
really
Mike.
popular one.
I don't remember the details on that one.
I had a friend who was a Mac user, and there was a few Mac-based BBSs out there too.
I had a friend that was just head over heels into Mac, and he every day I go to the tech lab and he'd show me a new bulletin board he found.
Uh-huh.
And it's you could talk, but you couldn't download programs or other things. But you get on a Mac bulletin board, you could download Mac apps.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I can't remember. I remember Teleguard. I don't remember what a lot of the other. I want to say World War IV was one, and there were some others that were out there. But I was most familiar with the Teleguard ecosystem. Fun times.
The Ivory, Color 64, CNET 64. Yeah, there's a few.
Fun times. Yeah, you were born a long time after that ended.
Well, it's still around.
Jackson. It's still around though. It is still around. So if you
were
want to,
born past the Renaissance.
yeah. If you want
That's
to,
funny.
if you want to experience non-GUI life online, go figure out how to telnet yourself into a BBS.
You've seen ASCII art, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like
Yeah.
exclamations and letters and numbers, and they make bulletin boards are where those became very popular.
Ah.
So
there's some good ones out there too.
At 9600 baud, how long would it take you to download a 640 by 480 picture of anything?
At how much?
It's going to be a few minutes.
9600 baud.
Baud. Oh, bytes.
Essentially bits per second, sort
okay.
of.
So you've heard of 14.4 modems or 28.8 modems?
No, I haven't heard of that.
56, was it 56.6? Was the top
56.6.
end? Yeah.
I remember.
Yeah, so it was basically the connection speed at which the beeps would go through the phone line and be heard and deciphered on the other side.
Mm.
You were really cool back in the original day if you could get a full duplex modem. So otherwise, it sends a bunch of data, then it receives a bunch of data, then it sends, then it receives, and it just really slows it down. 14.4s were awesome. I remember back in the day, downloading. Okay, we'll be very cautious. Downloading MP3s for evaluation purposes if I wanted to buy the CD, because back then you actually want to buy the CD because it's like good quality.
Right.
We got on 56K modem. You could download in real time an MP3 to play.
My first modem was a 1200 because it was in a computer system that was handed down to me, and the computer system was already a number of years old, and it had come with a modem, a 1200 modem. Its use case was that it was not sending huge amounts of data to wherever it needed to go anyway, so that's why it had a 1200. Which is hilarious because when I first discovered it had a modem, I thought, oh, I could do this. I had the configuration set up wrong, and I thought it was only capable of 300.
Ooh.
And so for the longest time, I was lucky to even find a BBS that would allow me to connect at 300, because most BBSs by that point were like, you got to be at least a 1200 or better, preferably a 2400, right? Well,
300.
that
Smoke
got
signals
me.
are faster.
Yeah, then I figured out I had the configuration wrong. I figured out I could actually do 1200, and so that opened up my world a little bit more. And then finally, as I muddled with that through high school to get me through all my computer programming classes, I got a graduation present. I got a 486 DX2 from Dell, brand new. And it came with a 14.4 modem in it.
Oh,
And
wow.
boy, did my world like suddenly accelerate on fire. Like download speeds were like lightning quick. Full screens on the BBS would like almost, it seemed like they were almost instant in loading and everything. It's
Now,
crazy.
You
if we
don't know
took
the pain?
peop-
Jackson,
if
I'm
we
going to
took
say
people
you don't know the pain.
Hang on. Artie first.
if we took somebody from Jackson's generation and put them at a computer to experience the original internet. I mean, I'm not talking about the BBSs. I'm talking about after the internet started becoming popular.
Mm-hmm.
They would be pulling their hair out because you know
Watching
one web page.
JPEGs materialize on the page.
Well, one
Close
web
still of
page,
a picture.
even like visiting something
Yeah.
as common as Facebook, that takes up more memory than you would transfer in an entire like 4-hour session online.
Mm-hmm.
It's just I'm glad we are where we are, but don't forget that we have come a long way.
We definitely have.
Give it another 20 years and we'll say the same thing.
Hopefully.
Yeah, hopefully.
There's one thing when you're building websites, you used to have to do a color palette match for 256 color. Not everybody had 16 million colors at their graphics card.
In fact,
You-
it was good
yeah.
if they had at least 16,000. I remember the setting on the old Macintoshes. You could set it, and I think even Windows had it too. Set your color depth, 256 colors, thousands of colors, millions of colors.
Mm-hmm.
And if you were millions of colors, wow, you were really cool. But it was actually decent if you could get to thousands of colors. It was a pretty decent experience as well.
I still remember my first 24-bit video card.
Can you even still
millions
set
of
that?
colors.
I don't think that's a setting anymore. Can you even still set that in Windows? The color
Yes.
depth?
Could
Maybe I
be
should
Well,
set
you can
256.
set it to 8-bit.
Which is the same thing, right?
Well, there's 8-bit and then there's index color. There's a
Oh.
difference.
So you would get a palette of 256 colors, but then
Those are all the colors you get.
a change to that color. So if you want like for abstract watercolors versus pastels versus earth tones versus whatever, you could change those colors.
Okay.
If you ever want to take a deep dive into tech and see how to optimize woefully inadequate hardware, check out Myst. The depth and complexity they put into that game was phenomenal. And then they would have to stack up the CDs so it would deliver the content as fast as possible to the viewer so they wouldn't get bored with load times.
Myst is spelled M-Y-S-T.
They've had a remaster fairly recently
I've
where
heard
they
that.
Decent.
brought the game back and they added more stuff to it, I think. Tried to
Oh,
make
really?
it a bit more in-depth because
Yeah.
Myst was boring when it came out. I'm not going to lie. That was one of the most boring games, and yeah, you're someone speaking that can sit down and, do the same task over and over and over again in a video game. Myst was boring.
Yeah, I didn't think so. My sisters and we collectively kind of played it together because we really enjoyed the puzzle and the problem solving aspect of it, of figuring out the puzzles. Like, what is it they're trying to have us get or figure out, and how are we going to figure this out? We enjoyed that part. We did get through the whole game, and it was for its time, it was a pretty revolutionary game to be as much as they could make it in an immersive world.
Oh, and the graphics were just off the hook.
Mhm.
I mean, nobody
Yeah.
had seen graphics in that caliber before.
I just
Mhm.
realized something.
Hmm.
Myst was the graphical version of Zork
Yes.
because you
Yes.
were given nothing and told to figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
No
Yeah.
wonder I didn't like it.
You know what Zork is, Jackson?
No, is that just a text-based game?
Text adventure,
Yep.
which they would call that now interactive fiction. Isn't that what they call that now, Artie?
Don't know about that.
In,
Yes.
I think the term is interactive fiction now. And there are engines that will run. They're, I believe, based on the original Zork engine. I can't remember what the engine's called, but there's lots of interactive fiction writers out there writing adventure games.
I have a new thing I want to do with ChatGPT now.
What's
What?
that?
Have it architect an interactive fiction game and play with it and see if the prompts can stick with me and without hallucinating.
I actually started making one as just a fun project. I've since had to put it on a back burner. I haven't looked at it in a while, but making a little fun text-based adventure just to teach myself some programming skills.
Hmm.
My goal was to make it funny because in a text-based adventure, oftentimes you're not given like specific ways to type it in, so you have to do error checking. And I was like, well, instead of error checking, I can just have it insult you for typing the wrong thing. So
Mhm.
my plan was to make it the most insulting text-based game anyone will ever play. At
Was
least to
that a
make it
typo,
fun.
or
So.
did you intentionally misspell the word?
Well, since you obviously didn't read the instructions I just gave you, here they are again.
Let me pull out the crayons. Oh wait, I can't. This is text.
I'd get
You're
the
an
crayons
idiot.
out for
Try
you,
again.
but I think you'd eat them before you use them to write.
Go
We can
find
help
a
you come
3-year-old
up
to
with
read the screen.
insults.
Oh, these are great. I should outsource. I'll let you know. Hopefully, maybe over the holidays I'll have a little bit of time and I'll revisit it. It was fun. It was a fun time.
That'd be
Cool.
awesome. Well, I hate to say it, but I think we're at the hour mark here, guys.
It was
Time
fun.
flies when you're having fun.
Yep.
Well, for all those watching, thank you. We appreciate your time and your patronage to this. For those of you who are watching this after the fact, please like and subscribe. This is a fantastic thing for us. We enjoy doing this podcast. We'd love to hear from you. Leave some comments, leave some questions. Reach out to us through standard methods. But until next time, we're gonna skip Thanksgiving next week. But until next time, I'm John.
I'm Mike.
I'm Jackson.
What am I?
And we're out of here.
To be or not to be.
Have a good night.